Good morning, incoming Rotary Club Presidents. Congratulations on the leadership role that you're about to step into, and thank you for all you're going to be doing in your communities. You know, Rotary has so many great programs, and I first learned about Rotary when we were having dinner at the friend's home of some of my parents, and they had a Brazilian exchange student staying with them. And I'd never heard of such a concept. Here was this teenager living halfway around the world with a family he'd never met. His parents didn't know. He was going to school here, and the adventures that he'd been on, plus the things that were still in store for him during his year, really had me intrigued. I remember on the car ride home, I said to my parents that I wanted to be an exchange student too, one day. But by the time high school rolled around, that dream seemed very distant for me. I had developed multiple eating disorders, and I was quite sick. I was suffering with both anorexia and bulimia. My body was literally eating itself, which is what happens often with those disorders. My brain wasn't functioning properly, and I was bleeding internally. So, quite frankly, I was just a mess. And I was scared, and my parents were very scared. Luckily, with their help, love, and support, and getting me the professional help that I needed, I was able to live with the tug of war that eating disorders often have, and slowly make some inroads into getting better. Yet somehow, during my 10th grade year, I still recalled that dream of wanting to be an exchange student, and I applied. And between the two high schools, I was actually selected for the one Rotary exchange opportunity to go overseas. Is there anyone from the Lake Oswego Rotary Club in the house today? Thank you, Lake Oswego. That year changed my life in more ways than I can count, and it still impacts me to this day. Well, what really happened that year is you saved my life. When I had the opportunity to go to South Africa and become more, because one of the things that the youth exchange program kept emphasizing over and over and over is that as a young teenager, I was an ambassador, not just for Rotary, not just for the Lake Oswego Rotary Club, but for America. And that awakening allowed me to start to look at the struggles I was having quite differently. In fact, not that this is insignificant, because eating disorders are very deeply rooted. But to be in a country, imagine South Africa, 1980-81, an isolationist country under apartheid rule, halfway around the globe, that we knew very little about, or we understood very little about. I was able to look at my disorder in a different light. Here was a country where there were lots of people starving, because they didn't have access to food and water on a regular basis. They didn't have access to education. And while I went to school that year, and while I worked with Rotarians and other exchange students on projects, it helped me start to break free of my eating disorder and appreciate the abundance that I had. And that's when I really turned a corner and started to get a handle on the self-destruction that I was going through. And that's all because of the Rotary Youth Exchange Program. As Chris said, I do dedicate my life now to helping people try to find their way back to health and vitality through a variety of ways, whether it's hormone imbalance, gut disruption, metabolic dysfunction, such as type 2 diabetes. These are all things that we have more tools available to us now. My goal today is to help you, incoming leaders, address one of the single most important aspects of your year, and that is you, your health and well-being. The Rotary slogan of service above self does not mean to sacrifice yourself. Your first priority is yourself, your health and well-being, physical and emotional, above your family, above your work, and above Rotary. So that's what we're going to dive in today, and I'm going to help you with some implementable strategies that you can start to use right now today to support you in your leadership year. Does that sound good? Great. Let's get started. We're going to cover 3 different areas or levers that, as I call them, nutrition, sleep, and exercise and movement. So number 1 is sleep. Surprise, because you probably thought I was going to start with nutrition. So every single process in your body is affected by sleep or lack of. Your digestion, your elimination, your hormone production or lack of, your cognition, your comprehension. All of these things matter, and the basis, one of the foundational components of health and well-being, is getting adequate amounts of sleep. 4 to 6 hours, and there are some people who can survive on 5-6 hours of sleep a night. But that doesn't turn out to be healthy for you in the long run, especially from a cognitive standpoint. The average person needs 7 to 9.5 hours of sleep a night in order to go through all the processes that your body has to go through when you sleep. And we have a lymphatic system that detoxifies our body. We have a glymphatic system that detoxifies our brain. If you can't detoxify these areas, you cannot rebuild and you cannot recuperate in any way, shape, or form. In fact, cognitive studies have shown that getting just 4 to 6 hours of sleep is as bad for you as staying up all night, although you think you're fine. So as you're looking at your leadership year and you're planning out your weeks, week over week, and all the meetings and events that you're going to be doing, I want you to consider how to make sleep happen, and that requires a plan. It's a scheduling plan. So you look at your schedule for the week, and this is how, when Michael and I travel a lot and we're at different conferences and our hours are not always our own, we actually have to look at our sleep plan and start to chart it out. When can we get some sleep? Do we catch a couple hours here and there? Do we sleep in a little bit later in the morning? Because we need a certain amount of resilience to do the things that we want to be able to do, and so do you. So when you're planning out your week, actually schedule. If you know you've got a super early meeting the next morning, try not to do a super late meeting the night before. This doesn't always work out, but it's one of these ways that you actually start to look at how to prioritize you and the resources that you need to bring to the table. And here's another thing that I just want to say. As a leader, people are looking at you for a variety of things. It's not just your ability to talk to a crowd or handle a meeting or raise dollars. They're looking at how you respond to situations. How you treat yourself makes a huge difference. So if you're tired all the time and you're harried and rushed all the time and you're snapping at people because you're tired all the time, you're actually setting the tone for future leaders. And that tone is, oh my God, this job really takes it out of you. And that's not what we're trained to do, right? So make a plan, schedule it, and that plan needs to be consistent. So ideally, you want to get up within the same hour and a half and go to bed at the same hour and a half, night over night, if you can. Because the body likes consistency. The body likes to be able to rely on its ability to go through the processes it needs to rebuild, restore, and rejuvenate. Start turning off your devices early if you can, and if you're working on the computer and you're looking at your phone and you're answering emails, put the night mode on. I know we have it on phones. I know that there are programs on the computer, such as Flux, that you can put on. So it starts to dim the blue light. So there are extensive studies that show that blue light stimulates our pineal gland, And that's where we get what's called melatonin, which is a hormone that tells our body it's time to start going to sleep, is produced. So if we're activating it past hours, the body's confused because it's like, well, I thought it's bedtime. No, it's not bedtime, right? Blue blockers are another great thing that you can use. We have them both in reading glasses as well as TV. So when after dinner and we want to watch a movie to unwind or some great series on Netflix, we use blue blockers. So we literally watch our TV with blue blockers because it downplays all the blue light that is stimulating the brain to stay awake. And some of these things you may have heard before. Blackout curtains, huge. If you can dim all the light in your room, blackout curtains are essential. Sleep mask, and I'll tell you this, when Michael and I started our relationship and we were traveling early on, Michael had a sleep mask. And at first I thought, well, that's kind of prissy. Until I got one. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, because the littlest, tiniest light, the smoke detector in a room becomes a beacon in the middle of the night. Our eyelids are thin for a reason, right? So it wakes us up, and that sleep mask takes all of that away. But why this is important is because it allows you to get into the stages of restoration. That's the most important thing. It's not how long you're in bed, it's if you're able to get into the stages of restoration and rebuilding. That's how you wake up refreshed. Couple other quick tips. The body sleeps better at cooler temperatures. So even if you're somebody who tends to run and like it a little bit warm, 62 to 64 degrees in the ambient room is a little bit better for the body. Because to get into restoration, we need to lower the body's temperature. That's a big part of the lymphatic system and the cleansing of it. If you snore, get it checked. At least make sure that you don't have something like apnea or some sort of blockage that is preventing you from getting the air you need. Can't get air to the brain, can't get air to the body, cannot rejuvenate, rebuild. And unlike fat, we cannot bank sleep. You cannot be at a deficit, and think, oh, I'm going to catch up on the weekend. That used to work maybe when we were teenagers or in our 20s, but it doesn't. There is damage that is done to the body and to the brain by continual deprivation of sleep. Lever number 2. Nutrition. My favorite subject. So I've got a question for you. How much crap do you think a person can ingest? Before the cumulative load starts to erode your health? I don't know. And neither does the medical industry. But it's happening, and we're watching it all around us every single day. Now, this is something that's really important, and I need you to hear this. It's not your fault. We were not taught how our bodies work. And we didn't have to deal with compromised food supplies like we do right now in terms of what's in our food or not in our food. But it is your responsibility. And I'm going to paraphrase the great Zig Ziglar, nothing goes into my mouth without my permission. So you have choices every step of the way that can determine how you feel and how you want to feel. So I study and practice this for a living, and we're getting new information every single day. The emerging field of nutrigenetics, also called nutrigenomics, is the study of how nutrients can upregulate or downregulate your health. In practical terms, we have genes, and what we do to our body determines whether we turn on or off those genes, which is called epigenetics. Sometimes there are things that we want to turn on, but by and large, a lot of the epigenetic switches that we're starting to see play out in our society and other societies around the world as disease is on the rise is epigenetic changes due to lack of quality food. So literally, food is code for your body. It's like programming software. And that communication between your cells in the system, again, goes back to the body and tells it whether to activate health or disease. So what you put in really makes a difference. But I want to simplify this even further. The easiest way to look at food, instead of good, bad, right, wrong, because food guilt is a huge problem. How people talk about food in terms of, well, I'm going to treat myself for this, or I went to the gym, so I'm going to treat myself and do this, right? Instead of looking at food that way, why don't we categorize it as a nutrient or a non-nutrient? So a nutrient is a substance that when you put it in your body, from the minute it's in your mouth, sometimes from the minute you smell it, your body, because we get hardwired to things that we eat, and our body chemistry hardwires that information as well. So you put something in your system, and your body's trying to figure out, where do I use it, how do I break it down, and how do I eliminate it in a timely fashion? But the most important key to that is, where in the body is it going to produce energy, or AMPK? That is our lifeblood. That is our currency. It's the electricity that powers our body. Non-nutrient. A non-nutrient is a substance that when you put it in your mouth, the body's going, what's happening here? Don't recognize these substances. How do I utilize it? It's possible that some of these substances are hijacking the brain and satiety centers because of their chemical makeup. So you're putting something in, and not only is it bypassing your body's ability to understand how to utilize it and create energy, but it's actually hitting addictive pathways, and it wants you to eat more. Nutrient and non-nutrient. Ultra-processed foods are probably the most abundant and the easiest things to talk about, and it's wonderful that we have food available to us 24/7, right? We have all sorts of things that you start traveling to other countries, and it's like, wow, the amount of food and stuff that's just here is amazing. But it doesn't mean it's good for us. So when we start to look at ultra-processed foods, let's take potato chips as a good example. Potato comes out of the ground, raw, whole food. It's got vitamins, minerals, some fiber, things that our body can actually use, convert to energy. Potato chip, in order for it to become shelf stable, goes through a typical processing system, generally has some junk oils, which we'll talk about, and then its biological and enzymatic components need to be removed, and chemical additives are put in so that it can become a shelf-stable product, non-nutrient. Your body's not going to get much out of it, if anything. It's going to create an energy drain on our system. So some strategies. If we're looking at nutrient and non-nutrient, some things that you can start to do today that have proven to be effective on starting to shift your health and well-being. Number one, limit your feeding window. Now, that's not the same as intermittent fasting, and I'm sure a lot of people in here have heard about intermittent fasting. It's a very powerful tool, especially clinically, when we're working with clients that we're trying to reverse type 2 diabetes and other metabolic conditions that need advanced intervention. But limiting your feeding window is, I think, a friendlier way to just go, okay, I don't need to eat 24/7. Ideally, what you want to look at is you want to eat your first meal of the day within 2 to 2.5 hours of rising, and you want to eat your last meal of the day, finish your last meal of the day within 2 to 3 hours of lying down to go to bed. because you don't want your body digesting food through the middle of the night when it's supposed to be in its repair, rejuvenation, and rebuilding cycle. Eat 2 to 3 meals a day. So it was very popular a number of years ago, is the snacking mentality where you want to eat every couple of hours. Worst advice ever. Worst advice ever. Now there is, if you're somebody who's an athlete, bodybuilders have learned how to use this very effectively. There's a reason for doing that that has to do with how you're structurally changing the body's metabolism to burn food and not store anything, but it's not designed to be used long term. So ideally, you want to eat 2 to 3 meals a day. That's it. You don't need to snack. And the reason you don't need to snack is the body survives well on insulin stability. That's the golden ticket, maintaining a stable insulin level even when you eat, even when you exercise, because you've had proper balanced meals that support your body's requirements. So 2 to 3 meals a day, and we want to have them, when I say macronutrient ratio, macronutrients are protein, fat, and plant fiber. For right now, we're not going to talk about starch, and starch is everything: peas, corn, beans, grains, rice, potatoes, things that convert from their form into a sugar. So that's what has to happen with those types of foods. The body needs protein, fat, and plant fiber, predominantly. It doesn't mean the body can't learn to use some other foods, but it doesn't necessarily support baseline health. But that's also how you control insulin levels throughout the day. So let's talk about, and no offense to anybody who made any arrangements, this is about looking at how to make choices that support the way you want to look and feel based on the activities you have ahead of you today and how you want to feel tomorrow and then the next day. So if we look at the breakfast buffet this morning, which was very robust, there was a lot of things to choose from. You want to approach each meal with a strategy. And ideally, that strategy starts with your first most important meal of the entire day, and that is breakfast. If you don't eat breakfast, get over yourself. You need to eat breakfast. This is how you stabilize your body's insulin and set your metabolism for the whole day. Because when you wake up, you're already in a low blood sugar state. If the body has done all of its repair work during the night, it is looking for something to eat. And a lot of people are used to saying, well, I'm not hungry in the morning. Doesn't matter. Function, function, function. What do I need to function more efficiently that supports my body? So you're going to the breakfast this morning. There were no potato chips on the breakfast bar this morning, so that was great. We don't have to address that. But there were potatoes, right? And there was a lot of fruit, beautiful looking fruit, and there were muffins, and there was a lot of other stuff out there. So when you start your day, ideally, women, we want 30, 35, I actually like 35 to 40, better, grams of protein in your first meal. Men, you need 40 to 45 on average. And that comes from predominantly animal-based products: eggs, bacon, sausages, yogurts, full fat, not the stuff that's got all the artificial flavors and sweeteners, but things that your body can actually use as building blocks for them. And then there's a natural extension of fat that is in those foods that helps your body, again, with insulin stability. Outside of that, you don't need anything else for breakfast. You may want it, but your body doesn't need it. And if you're going to have one of those other treats and some potatoes and a muffin, what I want to encourage you to do is put the most nutrient-dense components on your plate and eat them first. Don't eat the sweet stuff first. We do not have a mechanism in our body to tell us when to stop eating carbs because they are non-essential nutrients. The body has no need for them. We are ketogenic beings, and we function very well on protein, fat, and plant fiber. Controlling your portion size. Also, not a difficult thing to do once you start getting used to kind of what your body needs. One of the guides that I like to use, now everybody's hands are a little bit different size, but if we're mostly proportionate, I like to use my hand as a guide. So if we're talking about things like red meat, it's a smaller portion. 3 ounces is kind of that palm of your hand. If we're talking about things like chicken, it's a little bit bigger portion, 4 to 5 ounces on average for women, 5 to 6 for men. And then the larger portion is when we're looking at fish and things like that, because we can get anywhere from 6 to 8 ounces and still have a really good macronutrient ratio. Trade whole foods for carbs. So again, just like on the breakfast buffet this morning, the question is, does the food that you're putting in support how you want to feel energetically through the day? Starting the day with carbohydrate, and I know this is going to be hard for some people to hear, is not in your best interest in general. It doesn't mean you can't have it from time to time. But if you look at a baseline strategy for health, protein, fat, plant fiber. And that doesn't include fruit, and we'll get into that in a little while why. But if you are going to have some extra carbohydrates, balance them out with your proteins and fats. From your nutrition strategy standpoint, when we look at, like last night's dinner was a really good example. So we had dessert on the table. Many of us had had a couple glasses of wine or were getting ready for a couple glasses of wine. I start to look at when a meal is put in front of me or a meal that I've chosen, there was quinoa and stuff on the plate, also really healthy seed grain. But if I'm drinking my carbs, which I was, I'm not going to eat the other stuff because of the load on my body. And I've done this long enough that I know how I want to feel. So again, it doesn't mean you can't, it's about a strategy. If I'm going to have 2 glasses of wine, I'm not going to eat dessert. I'm not going to eat croutons. I'm not going to eat bread, and I'm not going to eat any other carbohydrate, because in order to balance out that non-nutrient, macronutrient, I need whole food. Does that make sense? And one other thing, and I just want to bring this back to nutrient and non-nutrient. Don't demonize food. Don't punish yourself. Oh, I ate this, so I've got to go do this. If you can get away from that and you can just start to go, does this support me or does it tear me down? And I think most of us have been eating long enough that we can tell the difference. We can tell when we eat something and it makes us not feel good, or we get indigestion, or we start to get some gas, whether we're burping or other forms of gaseous, noxious fumes. These are indications, right? These are indications that our body is not breaking these things down. So focus on the foods that can support and build you up. I'm not going to take a deep dive on junk oils, but if you can, take a picture of this. We have more than enough causative data now that proves that junk oils are extremely damaging to our body. The reason they're so damaging is because most junk oils that are on the list to avoid are what's called seed oils. And the process that they go through in order to extract some oil, which is generally a chemical or heat extraction, then there is a deodorizing and a bleaching process, because the oils are often rancid and turn terrible when things start to happen. So the downside of what happens with these junk oils is that they start to damage intestinal lining. And that's where things like leaky gut syndrome, diverticulitis, flare-ups are becoming more and more common because of the oxidative damage or inflammation. I'm sure everybody has heard that term, inflammation. Where does it come from? This is one of the places inflammation comes from. Junk oils that create oxidative stress and damage in our body. Oh boy, is sugar the devil? Sometimes. Does anybody have grandkids and see what happens when they get all that Halloween candy? That chemical, your wonderful little sweet grandchild or child turns into the devil. There's a chemical reaction happening at that time, and it's changing their brain chemistry for a period of time. They are literally being hijacked. There are over 200 different names for sugar, and it is hidden in everything, especially ultra-processed foods. So, the labeling around this is also designed to be confusing. So here's the big key I want to share about sugar, and this includes fruit. There is no daily requirement for sugar. The body produces everything it needs in the liver. What your body needs. That doesn't mean your body can't learn to use some of the benefits of some types of fruit, like berries, strawberries, melons, things along that line, pomegranates. But in general, it does not help your baseline nutrition. Now, there are some phytonutrients that you can get, but by and large, you can get all that stuff from veggies as well without elevating insulin levels in your body or hijacking the brain. So most fruit is made up of two types of sugars, fructose and glucose. Glucose is something that can get in your bloodstream very quickly and give you some quick energy, can be used by your muscles, especially post-exercise. Fructose bypasses satiety signals and is processed by the liver, which is where we start to see things like a rise in NAFLD. So when you're considering sugar, and this includes things like diet soda, fake sugars are still sugar in terms of how the body chemically responds to these sorts of things. And here's one other thing. When you're looking at labels, the FDA has something called the rounding rule. And that rounding rule means under natural flavors, you can put anything under 500 milligrams and not have to divulge what it is. And it's usually sugars and other chemical additives. Maltodextrin is one of the most common. So when you see natural flavors on a label, it generally is not, just so you know. Time?
Yeah, I was just wondering, what about, okay, we have something in Canada, I believe we have bubblies, and like or everybody's drinking flavored water now, and it says like sugar-free and all that.
It depends on who's making them. Topo Chico is one of the companies that has an amazing mineral water, but as soon as you get into the flavor, because of the way it's processed, it becomes a non-nutrient food or anti-nutrient. Yeah, flavor additives. So movement and exercise. You guys have been in a lot of meetings yesterday, and you've got a lot more today. So movement and exercise are essential to your well-being. Just like sleep, you need to schedule this. It's very, very important. The more sedentary you become, the harder it is to restart that. And it's basically move it or lose it. So there's two different things to look at. Movement is periodic exercise, periodic movement throughout the day. So when you get up from your meeting this morning and this afternoon, take a trip around the hallway before you go and sit back down. You need to go to the bathroom, use the bathroom, but take another loop around. Get the blood pumping. Just get some movement going. Household chores, walking down the block. There's so many ways to just incorporate movement throughout your day. If you've been sitting for an hour and 90 minutes, get up and move, because the body really needs it. It affects our bodily processes. Exercise is something that's structured, repetitive, and has a purpose of building. So as you're working on your leadership year, I encourage you to find 3 20-minute windows a week. Schedule them on your calendar. They're scheduled on my calendar. One of them is strength training, and that has some form of weights, resistance bands, body weight exercises. One of them is cardiovascular training, which increases your VO2 max, or your body's ability to pump oxygen throughout your body and oxygenate your muscles. And then the other one should be something fun, something that you really want to do. Zumba, dance class, something that's just different that you really want to enjoy and do, but make it consistent. Dr. Peter Attia, who is one of the leaders in anti-aging medicine, and the studies that they've done, says there is no single drug or combination of drugs to date that reduce all-cause mortality, that is, all causes of death, as effectively as exercise. It's one of the easiest tools. Do something in your club where you guys go out for a morning walk somewhere, right? Start to do some more things in your community where you can actually start to incorporate this, because it's supporting you and it's supporting future leaders as well. I'm going to wrap up today. I want to make sure that if there's anything I can do to help you in your leadership year, you have the ability to reach out to me. So please use this QR code. You can find me on social media everywhere. But I want to leave you with a story of why I joined Rotary. Because you heard the story of how I got into Rotary, but I hadn't joined Rotary at that point. When I was done with my exchange year, back in 1981, we didn't have any other Rotary programs available to us. There was no Interact in my high school, and there was no Rotaract in my college. So after this amazing 3-year whirlwind experience, I was kind of done. But in 2013, I somehow got connected to a gentleman on Facebook, and I liked his content, and I liked his humor. And we started talking, and it was very interesting because early on we found that we had Rotary in common, even though he was an active Rotarian and I had been away from it for a long time. Things went very well. We started traveling together, and he spoke at a lot of Rotary conferences, so I got to get back into Rotary, and it was like I never left. It was such an amazing feeling. The group of people, everywhere we went, the groups of people, it's like you're an unspoken part of the family. It was such a wonderful feeling. And when Michael became district governor, that was another area of just looking into, oh my gosh, how can we do more? How can we be more? How can we become more in Rotary? But I still had to decide, is this something that I really want, and what's my purpose in Rotary, and why would I join it? And the biggest reason I did make the decision to join was not to please Michael. It was because I can't make the difference in the world that I want to without more like-minded people. You have the power this year in your clubs. And what incoming President Mario said yesterday, it all starts at the club level. What you do, who you inspire, how you connect in your communities. We did a project during my presidential year that was 3 years in the planning, and we looked at where there was a void. And the void was our club was disconnected from schools, parents, and local businesses in one of the most important business communities in Michigan, in Troy. And so we put together a project that encompassed all those aspects. We did a buddy bench project in all of the elementary schools. And the goal was not to say, hey, we're doing buddy benches. The goal was to connect all these areas that we had somehow been disconnected from. Children, their parents, the teachers, administrators, local businesses. It was amazing. We placed 32 benches in all of the elementary schools in the city of Troy, the public elementary schools, and the businesses were vying to be able to be a sponsor of the bench. So it was a wonderful way to bring all these areas together and start to develop more people who looked at Rotary in a different way. Rotary's been a thread in the fabric of my life, and now you're part of that as well. Thank you so much. Good luck on your leadership year, and congratulations.